All right, guys, so the top fly that we're going to be tying this time is going to be the Squirmy Worm. Another very, very, very easy pattern to tie, very, very effective on the river. So when we were going through and trying to decide which fly patterns we were going to do for this tying clinic, I decided on these three patterns because these are going to be literally some of the most effective patterns that you can take out on the water. You can have these three patterns in your box and you're going to have a good day on the water. Typically pretty much any time of the year. And so we started off with the zebra midge. We got the zebra midge and we got the ruby midge. I really like those two flies. They work really, really good. But a lot of times when I'm fishing, I'm going to dual nip. And so I'm going to have two flies tied on. And so I'm going to have a fly up top, underneath my indicator still. So say I'm in, wading and I'm in, waist deep water. I'm going to have my indicator and about, 2.5, 3 foot down, I'm going to have my first fly. And then under that, another foot or so, I'm going to have a second fly. And so typically what I do is my nymph or my zebra midge is going to be on the bottom. And then I'm going to have an egg or a squirmy worm up top. And what we call that is an attractor fly. And so what they do, those fish see that pop of color or that worm or that egg and they come check it out. Now they might not necessarily go take that egg every time, but more times than not, they're going to see that midge tailing behind and they'll go ahead. But we're going to go ahead and start with the squirmy worm. And there's a lot of different things people can gripe about this material. It gets cut really easy. It doesn't really take to glue very well and things like that. It rolls on the hook a lot. And so there's different ways that you can fight this. So the way that I'm going to do it today is the way I normally tie most of my squirmy worms. But I'm going to start it just behind the bead, just like I did on the last one. And we're going to be using a little bit thicker thread here. We're using 140, which is kind of a streamer thread. That's why I tie most of my streamers on. But the reason we upped is because that midge thread, the smaller diameter thread that we were using earlier, will cut into the squirmy worm material a lot easier. So this is a little bit thicker. Doesn't have near as much bite. This is a size 12. We're using a Daiichi hook. Oh. There we go. We're back here. You want to see that? And so you can tie these on size 12s, size 14s. I normally do them on size 14. I did 12s today just because they're a little bit easier to manage. But 12, 14, and then the bead size is a 7/16. They're right, 64, 7/64. And they're also tungsten. I like tungsten better than brass just because they get down a lot quicker. They're a little bit more expensive, but I think that they're worth it. All right, so we have our material here. And if you look, if you were going to try to make this even, you would kind of think about it like this, and you have half off the front, half off the back. But instead, what we're going to do, because this material's better, I'm gonna make it half. Instead of in the middle, the half point's going to be tied in on the back. Okay. And so I'm going to do 2 wraps, and what I do is I pull this thread in between my index finger and my thumb, and I catch it with my. That way, when I pull down, the crack in between my 2 fingers, that line follows it down and comes straight down on top of that material. That way it gets stuck. And I'm going to do that twice. Okay. Now that I have that secure, I'm going to go ahead and take this material in front. I'm going to go ahead and wrap back towards the front of the hook, right behind the eye. And so the next step that I'm going to do, and this is what I found that ends up being the easiest as far as not twisting off the hook shank and makes it look a little more wormy. So what I do is I actually take this and I wrap the material around the hook. And you can kind of play with it. But once I get to behind the eye, I'm going to go ahead and wrap behind it here. I'm going to do it probably 2 or 3 times and then wrap in front. And see, that's why people dislike squirmy worms. It's because they break very easily. I'm going to go ahead and finish that. And so if that happens and you're at home, it's not a big deal. You can fix it. And so what I would do if I was at home and that happened, I would just come in here. Can I get the length that I want and tie on a new piece? And then call that good. And see, it's already trying to cut right there from that. So just make sure you don't pull on the thread too hard because it will slice it. So that's an easy way to tie a squirmy. Another way that a lot of people, you'll see people do is if, I don't think we have them here, we don't have threaders here, do we?